Here, we have done your bidding. We have followed your instructions, and we are here to fulfill what we were destined to do. We start the ritual. Blood-bound pact, the grave's cold kiss, from life to death, eternal bliss. In pale moonlight, his power rise, death's sweet gift, the immortal prize. Yes. Oh, yes. Go forth, our Father. We have fulfilled our obligations to you. May your power grow over time. We leave you to your new form in the afterlife of your choosing. Goodbye, Father. Goodbye.
Hello folks, this is Founder Layron with the Fans Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Witherbloom estate and the Necro sisters, or the Witherbloom sisters. Essentially they're the daughters of a very powerful warlock or a wizard, and he was a necromancer, and to ensure that his power grew and that he would survive the afterlife, he had prepared himself to transfer his soul into a phylactery. So they made when he was alive, they sourced a large onyx gem and they carved it masterfully into like a crystal skull. And essentially it's like a black crystal skull, and that's going to be his phylactery. And it's basically down in their basement, and they are preparing to transfer his soul from his living body, basically he's failing, he's dying now, and transfer it to the phylactery. So the process is very delicate. He's relying on his two daughters to perform the ritual, and they have successfully sourced all the materials. They know what to do. They've been trained almost their entire lives. So the sisters themselves are interesting. So there's two of them. They have different mothers. They all have both different strengths and weaknesses. So Mara is the younger one, and she's essentially pretty, I'd say gruff, kind of mean, vindictive, kind of brash, but she's a natural sorceress. Her mother actually passed down her magical abilities to her daughter, and she actually met her mother actually met the patron of the Witherbloom estate when they were at a wizard's conclave. So that's how they met. But this was after the oldest daughter's mother had passed. She was kind of like a witch. She had sold her soul to a demon or a devil, and in trying to help her mom, Verena also did the same thing, kind of followed her mom's footsteps to try to get him off of the mom, and basically said, okay, you could have my soul essentially in exchange for power, but I want you to release my mother. And it never really worked out quite the same way as she had hoped, but nonetheless, so these are the Witherbloom sisters. I've already done some content on this earlier, about a few months ago, and I wasn't very successful because I had a lot of technical issues regarding my computer, so I had that. And then lately, the last couple 2 or 3 weeks, I've been very sick. I've had a really bad cold, and it's probably like the sickest I've been in a long time. I actually went to the doctor. They didn't say I had COVID or anything, Kind of felt like pneumonia or something, but whatever it is, it's pretty nasty. It's still kind of lingering, but I'm feeling a lot better. Actually been resting a lot, doing a lot less streams and that sort of thing. But I'm kind of making a comeback, and I want to say if you are new to Fantasy Grounds and you've never used the platform, check out the Fantasy Grounds Academy. We do a pretty good job on onboarding individuals into kind of learning the ins and outs of the platform. I mean, we don't know everything, but we know enough to get you started. And if we can't help you, you definitely want to check out the official Fantasy Grounds Discord and the official forums. Those are where you're going to get your best and most help, and you're going to have a lot more eyes on it. But if you need some individual help or some kind of onboarding or hands-on training or even just some tips and such, the Fantasy Grounds Academy does a pretty good job at that. Traditionally, we had held a lot of classes in the past when we had a lot more interest. Lately, we haven't had as much engagement, so what we're doing is if you join our Discord and you want a specific class, we have a request area now. That way we know that you're more than likely going to show. Previously, I just would throw out an event, hope people would sign up and then show up, but that wasn't happening. People would click that they're interested, but then they wouldn't show. So we kind of went away from that for now until the interest level picks back up. But nonetheless, we're still here. We're still operating. I guess I'm doing most of my work and my use cases and examples and best practices and stuff through YouTube right now. And all I'm really trying to do is just show you some of the capabilities of the platform. I'm not saying I'm doing a full-on tutorial because I think a tutorial implies that you've never used Fantasy Grounds, so I do those too. But in this case, this is a little bit more intermediate. These are for those who want to create their own content. So this would probably be more specific to someone who does a lot of homebrew or who wants to do a conversion, that sort of thing. But I'm not saying that a new user wouldn't pick up any good tips. I'm just letting you know ahead of time so you know what you're getting yourself into. But essentially, I'm creating the NPC stat blocks for a scenario that I'm writing up. So essentially, the two sisters, Mara and Verena, are basically trying to set up a ritual to transfer their father's soul from his undead soul into his phylactery, because he's basically becoming a lich. And in this scenario that I'm working on right now, it's basically their father is going to be transferred, and during the ritual they get interrupted by two ex-lovers or boyfriends or whatever. Each one of these women have had encounters with these individuals in the past. It didn't work out, obviously, but the two individuals are self-serving. They have an agenda. They basically want some of the secrets in the Witherbloom estate. So I'm creating their stat blocks as well. So we have a vampire and then we have a Cambion. And both girls had dated these guys in the past, and everything was great for about a year, and then things just kind of fizzled and fell apart. So now these two individuals kind of reluctantly got together and decided that they want to break into the Witherbloom estate and steal its secrets together and then make their way out. They both have similar goals and a similar challenge, which would be the sisters. So I have the stat blocks kind of going for them. And right now I'm working on the two Rottweilers that are loyal to the sisters. So these are some undead Rottweiler dogs that were living at one time, but they eventually evolved into these undead. They were resurrected as like zombies, essentially. So I'm going to make their stat block, and then I'm going to actually use the AI generative tool to create an image so that I can make tokens and all that stuff. So I kind of want to show you that stuff because I think that's where the work is. And I'm pretty sure that most videos out there show you the content when it's already done. It doesn't really show you the process of going through that. And I'm really big on that because I think people really need to understand what they could be up against. Now, this represents a situation where you may not have any content, like you're starting from scratch, or maybe you're just using the SRD. Whereas if you have an adventure that's already published and printed, you don't necessarily have to go through all this. So this is to let you know ahead of time what it is I'm doing, and the fact that if you buy a purchased adventure or something that's official, it's already going to be done for you. All the maps, tokens, all that line of sight, all that stuff. So this is representing more where you're going to actually build something almost from scratch. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in this video. So it's kind of made that preface known now, so you're not wasting your time. And then later on, when the video is up and it's been out for a day, I'll put some video bookmarks in it in case you want to go back. So for the time being, I'm going to start working on stat blocks. And what I'm doing right now is the 5e rule set has a tool in import mode, which you can access from the NPC records. And if you bring up NPCs, which I have over here on the left, this is my own group that I made. This is the Necro Sisters NPCs. That's just what I called the group. And then here's Mara and Sister Verena. So these are the two sisters, Witherbloom, and they're basically a warlock and a sorceress. And they are half-sisters through their father. And they've both been through a lot, and they are now the inheritors of the Witherbloom estate. So they are protecting the estate. They're helping their father complete his ritual. They're getting along, and they're working together, and they're trying to keep the outsiders out, and especially these two lovers that they once had that are trying to infiltrate and steal their secret. So that's kind of what this premise of the story is and the backstory. So I'm going to grab a stat block that I generated in ChatGPT. So I'm going to bring up ChatGPT, and then I'm going to show you the process that I'm going through in order to achieve what I got here. So first things first is I'll bring my browser over so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I created an article on the internet on our Fantasy Grounds Academy page. And this is called the FG Academy Times. And if you look for NPC, you'll find an article called Mastering D&D NPC Stat Blocks. So I'll put the link for this in the description later. But essentially, this just kind of talks about how to use the import tool and some of the things to look out for. And quite often, it's these formatting of these stat blocks. So you want something like this or like this, and quite often you'll get it differently. So that won't work when you go to import. So I have an example of the stat block, and this is what I use to generate stat blocks with ChatGPT. I just copy and paste the stat block part, and then I tell it this is the template, use this template, and 90% of the time it will create an NPC stat block that can be imported without a bunch of monkeying around. Because if you don't do if you have something different, like this is an example of a bad one, which means that it won't work. This is the sort of stuff that you're going to find in PDFs online, random places. So the only two places I know that will give you good stat blocks is either make your own or use a D&D Beyond stat block. Those work pretty good. Other than that, though, or from a Fantasy Grounds product, probably. But anything else is iffy. So it depends on the publisher, your source, the PDF, the files, whatever you have that you're making from. You can always take an existing NPC stat block, make a copy of it, and then edit that. So that's the easiest way to do it. That's the way I would start until you kind of get an idea of basically how the NPC stat block functions and what it's supposed to look like. Then I would start using the import tool and going from there, because this is kind of doing it from scratch. So what I'm going to do now is on the left-hand side, I'm going to paste the stat block for the Rottweiler. So I'm going to go back to my GPT session. So I'll show you what I got here. So this is a session that I have for the Rottweilers. Let me see if I can get back to it, because I was doing some kind of here we go. So here's the Rottweiler stat block, and this is the information. So as you can see, it's all done a certain way. The ability score acronym is on top, and the corresponding number is below. So that's probably your biggest hurdle with doing these. And the other thing is you have a section called traits, and then each trait needs a little period after it. So regardless of what all this says down here, this has to be this way, otherwise it's not going to parse correctly. So you have a trait section and you have actions. It's kind of switching or changing a little bit with the new 2024 D&D NPC stat block. The real difference is they have more actions now. The spell casting is in actions, and then each NPC has like a special action that they have to kind of make it easier. And then most stuff that doesn't have mechanics involved would be up here, and they no longer say traits, it just lists them after the challenge rating. So that's the only real differences I've seen with the stat blocks, and the fact that they don't say evil and that sort of thing. But anyway, so I just copied and pasted this particular section here, and all I did is I used this format that I created here, and that's one reason I made the article, is not just to publish this, but actually to help with copying and paste. So I have a place to copy from, because quite often I'm on my phone, I can do it there pretty easily. When I'm online, though, I can't just dig into anything. I got to actually have a source, so it makes it easier to do it, just copy and paste over. So this is the Rottweiler dogs, or undead. They're CR3 beast, undead beast kind of. They got rid of the keen senses since they're undead, but they have undead fortitude. They have pack tactics if they work together in tandem, and they have a knockdown trait instead of the sense of smell and the sense of hearing. So I subbed that out to kind of give it some balance. And then some actions here, they have a bite action. So if they bite, if they're successful, they have the saving throw has to be made or the opponent is knocked down. That's their main thing. So there's 2 of them, and I'm going to paste those into Fantasy Grounds. So when I come over to Fantasy Grounds, all the stat block information should be on the left-hand side. So I'm going to hit Control V, and as you can see, there's all these spaces in here. You don't have to worry about that. Fantasy Grounds, this import tool is pretty good about parsing that out. But if you right-click and you go to clean up text, you'll kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like when it imports. So that looks right. So you have traits here, and you have your actions down here, and then all these things are on a separate line, and they're all in the correct format. That's actually the most important part. If you have notes or background or anything else, they go over here on the right-hand side. So if you had a history, I would put that over here, and then I'm going to create a header up here. And then also if you have images or anything like that, you can link that here. I think there's a stat block change coming down the pipe where they're actually going to have an image tab, I believe. I don't remember. But I think that's something that might be coming from Fantasy Grounds. So let's go ahead, and I want to create the history. So I'm going to have it say, please write up the background and history, appearance, tactics for the dogs. It's going to know what I'm talking about because I had previously wrote up some history, so it's just going to pull on what I've already written. I'll say from previous conversations. So it kind of has an idea. So all it's going to do, hopefully, is just write up the backstory. Okay, undead Rottweilers. These once loyal guard dogs were part of the Witherbloom estate's defenses. When Verena and Mara's father, the powerful necromancer, realized the need for more vigilant guardians, he turned to dark magic to raise his deceased dogs from the dead. Infused with necrotic energy, these Rottweilers are now relentless in their duty, bound to protect the estate and its secrets for eternity. The necromancer's dark rituals enhance the Rottweiler's physical strength and resilience, making them formidable opponents. Their senses, however, were dulled by their undead state, but their relentless nature compensates for this loss. So they're a little bit tougher than an average dog. And this gives the appearance, which we'll use that shortly. And it redid the stat block. I didn't ask for that, but I'm going to go ahead and grab the all this stuff. This is like the background history. You don't have to have this, but I like my stat blocks to have a little bit more information. I'd rather have too much than not enough. So this is their background and history. And this is just going to make this more interesting. And if a DM wants to, if they want to use this content and they are trying to figure out what this is about, you have this. And I think this is kind of a thing that happens occasionally when you're running an adventure, is you're kind of left out to hang because they don't provide you with the next step. So, for instance, if you had like a summoner and they have the ability to summon animals or monsters, they should put the spell and the stat block, or at least the encounter generator, or sometimes if it's a thing where someone has to loot something off of you, it'd be nice to have a link to the parcel. Take it that next step, because when you're running this, you don't want to be digging through Fantasy Grounds looking for this stuff. So I think that's an important thing about not only converting modules and making it convenient for GMs, but just being more thorough and taking the extra minute to do it. And I think that that's important if you're going to run an adventure. And, if you want to save time, you don't want to be digging through the entire adventure looking for one little thing. I think that's an important aspect of these stat blocks. So you can utilize this back notes tab for more than just notes. I mean, you can put tables back here, whatever you need to run this encounter easier. And I just put this history here because I thought it'd be a nice touch. And it even goes into tactics. So it says the undead Rottweilers employ pack tactics to overwhelm their enemies. They coordinate their attacks, flanking their prey, and using their strength to knock them down, making it easier for the pack to subdue them. Their undead fortitude allows them to withstand significant damage, making them persistent and difficult to put down. So then it talks about their knockdown attack more in detail. And then it gets into their pack tactics and their relentless pursuit. So these are things that you might want to know if you're going to run this encounter and you've never run these kinds of creatures before. And I think this is a missing component in a lot of supplements and content that's out there. And a lot of it probably has to do with page count. And then they want the DM supposedly to make up their own. Well, yes, you can make up your own. That's easy to say. But when you're actually running it and you don't have the time to put in the prep time, that's where that kind of sucks. So I prefer to have that stuff in there up front. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So once I have everything in place and I'm satisfied with it, I'm going to hit import. And the stat block will pop up. And I just kind of look it over to make sure everything parsed correctly. So this is what I'm looking at. All these different things look like they're parsing, and that it's going to be useful and available when I need to run the encounter. So that looks correct. And then if you don't want to display this name, you can just say strange Rottweiler, because you won't know that they're undead necessarily. And then you can turn off the identification. So when you add this to the combat tracker, it's going to say strange Rottweiler instead of, undead Rottweiler, whatever. So that might be something you want to do. And then here are the notes. So this looks really good. And you got this nice summary back here, which is really clean, really professional looking. I like it. So this is kind of cool. So this is another ally for the sisters, the Witherbloom sisters. So when the estate is attacked or infiltrated, they can sick these dogs on one of the assailants. This technically what they'll do is, instead of spreading them out, they'll sick both dogs on one target, and that way they can focus on another target. And this also gives them a little bit more survivability if they're up against a big challenge, and they will be, because the necromancer sister and the warlock sister, or whatever, they're both kind of different magic users, but they essentially are, there's a level, a CR6 and a CR7. They're both spellcasters. They don't really have a lot of martial capability, so the undead dogs kind of make up for that. So they'll sick them on whoever they feel they need to. So that's kind of what these undead Rottweilers are for. So now I want to kind of make an image for them so that I can create the token for it. So in the description that was created, when I asked for the background, the appearance, all that kind of stuff, it gave me this. So this is pretty cool. It says, the undead Rottweilers have an unsettling presence. Their fur is matted and patched, revealing decayed flesh and exposed bone. Their eyes glow with a dim, eerie light, reflecting their unnatural state. They move with a jerky, unnatural gait, their muscles stiff and unyielding. Despite their grotesque appearance, they retain a hint of their former majesty and strength, making them a terrifying sight to behold. So this is what I'm going to use part of for my description, because I kind of want it to align with whatever it is I'm generating. So I'm going to copy that text. I could have probably did it within here, but I want it, or within the GPT session, but I wanted you to see that. And then you can take existing stuff from Fantasy Grounds and use that and expand upon it using a generative AI tool such as ChatGPT. Also, I recommend, if you're going to use this kind of thing, make sure it's homebrew, that you're just kind of using it for your own devices. If you're going to sell it commercially, you need to disclose that it's AI, something like that. And also try Claude 3, Anthropic's Claude 3. That program does way better with writing. I think ChatGPT is good as overall utility, but if you want a good writing tool, I think that the Anthropic's Claude 3 is superb. So I'm going to say create an image of, and I'm going to hit Control V, of an undead Rottweiler that has, because I only need one, I don't need two. Unless you want to make it a scene, like an image that you want to share, you could do that. Its fur is I'll say dull, comma, matted and patchy, revealing decayed flesh and exposed bone. Its eyes glow with a dim, eerie light reflecting its unnatural state. We don't need to put the movement in there because it's not a video, so we can delete that. And I'll say its stance, or its muscles are stiff and unyielding. And I think that's all I really need. And I'm going to put, I like the more photorealistic look, but then I also want it to have kind of that 3D kind of look to it. So I'm going to say something like 3D Octane render fantasy art. Something like that. We'll see how this turns out. And then for the orientation, since it's a dog kind of probably going to be sitting, I'll just say 1 by 1 square. I don't need a rectangle, or, I don't need it to be. I could ask for a vertical thing, because it's kind of sitting upright, but I think that square thing is going to be fine. Because really, I'm looking for its face. I mean, I'm going to have the full body thing because I can make that into a 3D asset for Fantasy Grounds, but I want to see, well, what does it says? It probably doesn't like the description. I'll say, can you try it again? It could be the wording, because sometimes, yeah, it was just a glitch, I think. But you got to be careful sometimes how you word it. For some reason, if it sees one key, yeah, see, I think it's, I'll say reword to help with the use policy case. Because sometimes it flags it depending on what, even though you don't mean anything, it still has like a policing thing. So they're trying to, keep away from gore and anything too extreme. That's basically what this does. Sometimes I get kind of mad about it because, Yeah, so it could just be the image itself. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste this particular, copy and paste that. I'm going to start a new session because sometimes it gets out of sync that way. And I'm going to try it this way, and I'm going to, basically just try it again with a new session. And maybe this will fix it, because every once in a while the server goes down, or you might have a keyword in there that's flagging it. It usually tells you, though. It'll yell at you and say, "Oh, we can't do that." They're trying to get away from nudity, gore, anything like that. But I don't know if that's the case. It's still having issues. So what this tells me is that it's having some kind of technical difficulty or something like that. And you can go into their server, into their Discord, and see if, or you can go online. We can look at, we can go chat GPT status, because that part could be down. So here's the status. And it looks like there's some partial outages like an hour ago. And today's the 7th. So there's nothing really major here. So I don't know what's going on. But this is how you can check to see if their server's down. So my last resort is going to be to use, I'll use, what do you call it? Midjourney. I don't usually use Midjourney anymore because I don't really like it as much. But what I want to do is kind of show you that process a little bit. So I'm going to go into my development campaign thing, and I'm going to basically prompt the, I don't even need to do that. And then we'll see how it turns out. So AR, this time I will go with a 1x2. Let me move that over so you can see what I'm doing. So this is the Discord version of the chat, or not ChatGPT, but Midjourney. I'll say an image of an undead Rottweiler that has an unsettling presence. Okay, so I'm setting up the parameters on the bottom. So this is your style. These little hyphens here are the commands. So I've asked it to give it an aspect ratio, and then I'm asking it to set how much of style you want. So style versus reality. So the higher this number, the more likely you're going to get something more artistic, and the lower, the more realistic it is. So I'm going to set it at 350. And then for quality, I'm going to go with Q2 because I like to have quality images. So that will set up how many pixels and stuff it's going to create. And then the last thing is I have I don't think I need that. There's a way that you can kind of create your own style. And you do that by clicking on images through their server, and you pick which one you think most represents what you would think the prompt is. So that's how it kind of develops a feel for what you're looking for as an end user. It doesn't necessarily change the generative tool, but it changes the output, like the seed and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see how this turns out. Yeah, it looks okay so far. Yeah. So that's not too bad, but I don't see I'm looking for a little bit more gore. Let's see what we got here. So that's not too bad. I mean, it looks pretty gnarly. I like this one here. I don't know what you guys think. What do you guys think? 1, 2, 3, or 4? This one actually looks good. I think this would represent it well, and then I can grab the face from it, and use that for a token. But that's kind of the style difference on that, and then you have a different experience when you're using ChatGPT. I wish this would be working. Let me try this prompt artist one. Oops, let me go back to that. This usually has a pretty good feel for what I'm looking for. So let me try the prompt artist, see if that will work. I don't know, we'll find out. If not, the other alternative that uses ChatGPT is, see, there's something going on. Oh, it says it doesn't comply with content policy. See, that's what I was thinking. So reword the prompt, and I'll say, so it is in, I don't know what their policy is. I just tell it to rewrite it. I mean, I know they don't want nudity and, extreme crap, but I don't think what I'm asking for is too much. But this kind of irritates me a little bit. You are subjected. Okay, so we'll see what this does. We'll see. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You're kind of censored on certain platforms, and that's one thing that people get pissed about. Is they're like, yeah, I don't like it. It's too strict or whatever. And I get it. They just don't want people creating, horrific images. So that's kind of weird looking. Let me try this without the 3D Octane render. Let's try this. Instead of photorealistic, I mean, that's kind of cool looking, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll just say a photorealistic. I don't need the Octane render thing. That's for the other platform. The fur is dull. I'll get rid of dull. I'll just say the fur is matted and patchy. And see, we have this as set as this. Let's try 9/16 vertical. See if that helps. Vertical. What am I doing here? Okay, there we go. All right, so we'll see. I'll say create. Yeah, so it didn't like the verbiage or the wording that I had. That's what was causing that previous issue. So you kind of have to be careful how you word it. It didn't want to display the blood and guts and gore, I think. I don't remember. It's been a while since I fought that thing because I normally generate images that don't have blood and gore. Yeah, so that's a little better. Yeah. So I can run with that. So I would take this image, possibly download it, and then use this as an image that you would use to make your tokens. So I might go into like this is a token stamp and use that. So I can take the image that I just created and then run it through that and make a token out of it. So you can do stuff like that. Now this is kind of a long drawn out process, and if you have to do this for like 10 different things, it can take a while. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. It just depends on what you have available. Ideally, you'd want to create all the artwork first, and then make all the tokens, and then import all the NPC stat blocks, and then associate the artwork with the stat blocks. If you do it like that, when you have more than one, it really goes quicker and it's a lot more focused, and you can kind of spread that out. You can one day you can just do all the artwork, and then the next day do all the tokens, and then do it in stages so you're not all over the map switching back and forth between tools. That's where you lose time, and I think that's also a point of frustration possibly, because people don't have time, and when they have to jump around and go back and forth 50 gazillion times, I mean, that's when it gets to be crappy, right? That's work. But when you do it in a certain manner, like if you do it in a certain way, it's gonna help you. It's gonna really go a long way, in other words. So it's gonna go a long ways. So a little bit of work up front is gonna go a long ways. So let's see. Make this a little bit smaller. And I think I want it to be a round pog, but you could use this for like, kind of like a portrait, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. So with no kind of, no real outline or anything, we can download that. This particular platform the image size default is 256 by 256, which works perfectly for small or medium creatures. If you're going to make a larger creature, like huge or large, that needs to be 512 by 512. And if you use this, you'll have to stretch it. It may not look as good, so just kind of heads up on it. So now I'm going to make the little pog. So I'll just kind of shrink this down a little bit. Kind of move it in place. And shrink it just a touch more. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And then I might change, actually I don't mind this brown background. But it's better if you have a lighter background. So let me, actually I do want to fix that. So make it a little bit lighter because it's easier to see on a map, on a battle map. And go ahead and hit download for that. So now I have 3 different images that I can use. And it just depends on what the use case is and what it is you're doing. So if you want a full body image, you're going to have to rephrase this. So maybe this will do it. So create a full body image of the subject above. We'll see if it does it or not. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. I don't really need one in this case, but there we go. So we could use this if you wanted to create one of those 3D tokens for the 3D view or 2.5D. So I'm going to go ahead and work on this one too, so you can see the process. So I'm going to take this image and cut out the background, and that's an important aspect of doing this. So it depends on what programs you have access to, but if you have GIMP, which is free, you can open it. I'm going to open this up with GIMP and we'll see what it looks like. So what you can do with this is to remove that background and make it a little bit easier on you. This one shouldn't be too bad, but that's not the right image. I didn't want that one. I wanted that full body image. So did I even download that? I don't think I did. Okay. So I'm going to download that and then go back to GIMP, go back into my downloads folder, and I'm going to rename this because this long name is problematic for some programs, including Fantasy Grounds. So if you have this large title here, let's rename that. So we'll say undead _ Rottweiler. And then in front of it, I'm going to say 2D. And that way I'm going to know what it's for. And I usually title all my things kind of like that with a leading name and then go into the description. So like this one is going to be portrait. So I'll do PRT _ undead _ Rottweiler. And I do that because for a naming convention. And so when you go back to it, you can easily reference what type of image it is, even if it's not expanded. So token, undead, I usually do TKN, undead, Rottweiler. And believe it or not, this is a very important step. You wouldn't think so, but it is. It really does make a difference when you're creating content if you have the things named aptly. Because I don't know how many times I've had images and maps and such that said like X3215A7. You know, it's like, what the hell is that? So anyways, I'm going to take this image, this full body image, drag and drop that here. And then in this particular case, depending on the file format, you want to go to Layer, Transparency, and you want to add an alpha channel if it doesn't already have one. So if you have a JPEG or a different format, you need to add the alpha channel. If it is a WebP or PNG, it will probably already have one, but just check before. Once you have that, you have this fuzzy select tool. And as you can see, it's already grabbing some of this background. So this is pretty mild. This is threshold is at 18, which isn't as sensitive. I might go up to 20. And then in that way it'll grab more. But if you go too high, it'll be aggressive and it will take away stuff that you want to keep. So you have to play around with what that number should be. But this is essentially how you can remove the background from an image. And like I said, if you set the sensitivity too high, it'll start taking away from the actual image itself. But if you dial it in correctly for the type of photo you have, it'll work pretty well. So this isn't bad, but if you have an image that looks a lot like the background, like I was afraid that this one would, it's harder to remove the background, much harder, especially with hair and fur and anything that strands like trees and bushes. Those are really hard to deal with. So ideally you'd want an image that has, oops, I didn't want that. You want an image that has some contrast. Like this had some white shadowing around it, so that helped a lot. If it was black like it normally would be, it'd probably be a lot more difficult to do this. So this is just kind of, you know, going through, getting rid of some of these artifacts here that we don't need. And what we'll do is, see, when you grab this, it takes all that. You don't want that. And I'm going to leave those there. I don't think I need to worry too much about that. Because when it renders, or when we make it into a 3D asset, you're not going to see that anyway, so it's not the big deal. All right, so I think that's pretty good. I mean, you don't have to be perfect. You know, if you have to, you can come in and take some of the excess out of here. But I think that's good enough. I think we got a majority of it. And like I said, it's going to matter what your background image is like. Like if it's dark or light, that's gonna make a difference on doing this. And then also the color of your object or subject. And then you got to play with the threshold. So if you go too high, like I said, it's going to take away too much. And if you go too low, then you're going to be doing a lot of manual cutting. So that's going to be up to you and the quality of the image and all that stuff. So, and there are other tools that can do this quicker. Like I use Canva quite a bit, and it has a tool that's pretty decent. Like I think it would have made this process a lot quicker for me. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to, I want to do a crop to it. So I'm going to say, where is that at? Image, crop to content. Okay. Nope, don't even have to do that. So file. Now I'm going to export it as, in this case, I want to do, normally I would do a PNG file, but I'm going to do, going to do a PNG file because the 3D tool that is provided by SmiteWorks only accepts JPEG or PNG. So I'll have to convert it to WebP at the very end. So do all your work in like a PNG format, and then at the very end, then convert everything to WebP. That's my advice. So take that to the undead Rottweiler.png, and it's going to be in the downloads folder, and we're going to export it. And then I don't use any compression because I think I'll do that later when we maybe just on one. And then when we actually do the conversion to WebP, it'll compress it down. So I don't need to worry about that. Save background color. We do not want that. Save resolution, save creation time. That's fine. I don't want to mess with anything else. So go ahead and hit export. There we go. So now I'm going to close this. And then I'll go into my program there and see what we got. So here's the background image now. And I'm going to take that and put it in the 3D token tool maker. So this is a tool that was put out by SmiteWorks to help with the 3D perspective in Fantasy Grounds. So it creates a high and a low, your X and Y axis, and then it creates a center point, and then it defines the height. And when you put it in Fantasy Grounds in the 2D mode, it helps it with how it displays. And it will rotate when you move the camera around. It kind of follows the camera, always facing you essentially. which I think is kind of creepy, but anyhow. So here I'm going to take that and drag and drop this image into the tool. And I can see I got some stuff here, some artifacts there. I'm not going to worry about that. But that's kind of left over from doing the cleanup. And I can see I got some stuff down here too. Whatever. All right, so this is kind of not ideal. So what you can do with that is I can go into the image itself, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I don't even care what I use. Let's just use a regular photo editor. So open with, we'll just do the basic Microsoft, built-in thing, which is easier to use and it doesn't take as many resources. And what I'm going to do is, what can we do here? So, oops, that's not what I want to do. Nope, that's not what I want. Let's try it again. So, I'm back here. I'm just going to open it with my Corel or Affinity or whatever the 9 programs I have. Okay, Paint Shop Pro. So this is a Corel product, very similar to Adobe. If you've used Affinity before, they were bought out by Canva. So they're still a separate entity, but they're going to inherit some of their functionality and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's kind of a good time because of all the Adobe mess that happened earlier. You're not aware of that. They were going to train people's data and for their AI tool, and everyone got pissed off about it. Okay, so this is basically what I was trying to achieve, is just to grab this part, and that way when we do the token, it's not going to incorporate all this other crap in here. We don't need that. And then I want to make sure it's at least square, so I'm going to put square on here, and that should square it up, so that way it's the same all the way around, essentially. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and File, Save As, or Export. There we go. Export PNG Optimizer. Okay, whatever. And then what we'll do is I'll put this on the desktop so I can find it quicker. All right, so that's just an extra step. I didn't have to do that, but I didn't want to deal with the artifacts and the excess stuff in there. So I'll go to the desktop now, and there's the image here. So try it again. So go to the tool, bring up the image, you go back to the desktop again. Okay. Let's bring that over here. Go back to this tool. I'm going to minimize that a little bit or move it, and then bring this over. Yeah, that's a little better. I mean, it got rid of some of it. Okay, so now we got rid of some of the artifacts in there. There's still a little bit here, but it's not too bad. Okay, so now what you want to do is set the measurement region. So the first dimension is going to be the height, essentially. So I'm going to come across here, and we're going to click right about here, or the width, I should say. And then when you come down to this corner, we're going to basically define this as the bottom, and that sets the height and the width. So the expected height in this case is going to be 1 grid, so 1 cube, right? And then if you want height in here or width, you can do that. So since this is a vertically oriented thing, or in this case like an animal, I think I'm only going to go with like 3.8 on width and not worry about the height so much. And that way it's displayed correctly horizontally, because he's kind of oriented horizontally. If he was standing upright like a humanoid, then I would do the height. And now let's click the center floor. So the way Doug or whoever did that tutorial video described this is you kind of want it, dead center if you can, and you divide it between these two stances. So maybe like right in here. And then you hit save XML. And that's going to save the file and the XML data. So if you're going to do a whole bunch of these, what I recommend is that you do all these in steps, like chunks, like do the one thing, do the other, do the process. Don't try to jump around unless you only got one. That's one thing. But if you've got like several of these or more than a couple, I would do them in a series. Do the XML stuff at the end and then convert them all to WebP and then put them into Fantasy Grounds or whatever you think is necessary. So this is going back to this. Now it's a pretty round. If you see how much time that took, it's pretty time consuming. So you're doing that for one creature. That's a lot of work. If you're doing several of them at once, it's more efficient to do them in stages. All right, so what I'm going to do is that's going to be artwork to be used for the 3D part. So what I'm going to do is go into Assets, and you want to make sure that you're in Images, because that's what this is going to be, an image. I already have a campaign folder, but if you click on Folder, it'll bring up your back end of your folder for your campaign. So I'm going to go with a new subdirectory here. And what I'm going to do is put 2D art or something like that. And then I'm going to paste those two files, which is the definition file that we just made and the art itself. So those are the two pieces. Now I also want to add some other things. So I'm going to go ahead and hit, I'll just say, this will be handout. So if there's anything else that I want to show in the game or whatever, I would use this folder. And that is going to actually have that full image or the unedited image that I had earlier. So what I want to do is take the images that I made earlier and then put those in there if I need to show just the dog, without being a token or an asset, just an art image. So I'm going to go into New Volume, go into my Downloads folder where I had all this stuff before, and probably just use a couple of these images to allow to show the player. So that way you have, more than one representation. And then I'm going to change this to just, instead of this, it's going to be handout or art or whatever you want to call it. I call this HAND for the handout. And that's going to be part of that. And then that's a portrait. So this portrait and the handout are going to go into this folder. And then what we want to do is when you have your images folder, or let's say in this case, this is the campaign folder. I don't have a tokens folder yet, but what I'm going to do is you can either create it, manually yourself, or what you can do is come back to this screen here. And whenever you add, take away, move things, rename the files, whatever it may be, you want to hit this refresh assets folder so it rescans all the changes you've made. And then I want to click on tokens because the one art graphic is going to be a token. Once you click that, click on folder, and it's going to make a new folder called tokens. And that's where I'm going to put that token file that we made earlier. So if you go ahead and grab, let's say these downloads here, and let's grab this token here, drag and drop it in there. There's our token. And like I said before, you want to make sure you refresh or it's not going to show up. So refresh down here. Now you have a folder in the tokens section called campaign. You open this up. There's your token. Now what you do is before you add the Rottweiler or your NPCs to any encounters or the combat tracker, you want to associate the art. So this is what it has right now. So what we're going to do is go back into assets. I'm going to take this token, drag and drop it into here, and then go back to images, which is where the other images are stored because they're handled differently. And for handouts, this is what we're going to use for the full body image, or we can use this thing here. I think I like that better. And then we'll use that 3D token thing to be used here. So let me see where that's at. Go back one. 2D art. There we go. So drag and drop that there. So that's basically the 3 different types of artwork that you can supply. You don't have to do all these. Like, you can just do the flat token if you want. If you don't plan on using that 3D view, then you don't have to do it. I mean, it's kind of up to you. I kind of like having it in case because I usually run everything top down. But if my players happen to click on that, the experience may not be there that you want. So let's take a look at this on a map and see what it's going to look like. Okay, so I was working on this the other day in a different show. I was having problems with the way this grid was kind of looking like. So it was off, so I reported that onto the forums. But here's the final product with the right grid and everything. So what I want to do is I'm just going to add the token and check it, make sure it works right. So I'm going to take the NPC, in this case, this Rottweiler. I'll drag and drop it onto the combat tracker. So here's it says strange Rottweiler because we made it unidentified. So that way, when you add it, it doesn't give away what it actually is. You can just say strange Rottweiler until they fight it, engage it, identify it, and then you can reveal it. And then I'm going to take the Rottweilers, there's 2 of them, and put them on the map. So I'm going to take the tokens, make them visible if you want. Take this token here and add it there. Okay. So here's the token. And I'm going to add 1 more Rottweiler. We'll have 2 of them. Same thing. Now I can identify them if you want or not. Okay, so there's our Rottweiler. So that's how I usually run this, depending kind of on the situation. However, if you want this to, use the other camera view, let me lock up the map, kind of resize it so you can see what's going on a little bit better. What's this? Yeah, we don't need that. Okay, so this is going to be where we check that part of it. So let's lock the map up. We did change the camera view. Okay. So the dogs are over here. So let me use this drop down and we'll take and add this and we'll see what they look like. So yeah, that's not bad. Yep. I don't know how this one got to be so small. I must have accidentally did that controlled. Yeah, so there you go. So that's not too bad. They look all right. Yep, so there you go. That's kind of your 3D kind of view. Now, without those definition files, or using that tool, you might be able to get this to work without using that. But when it comes to scaling a bunch of different objects, you might want to use this 3D tool here, because if you don't, it's not defined. And then the way the camera looks at this, it's got, each one of these has a center point, and when you have it selected, it's going to center on that one. I mean, it centers on the other one, but you can see it's more focused on this one. So that's why it looks so weird sometimes when you bring this up. See, now it's kind of weird fish-eyed looking because you're right over the top of it. So that's just kind of gives you an idea of what, the sort of steps you got to go through to get those to work right. And then basically all I've been doing is taking the stat blocks, building those, and then creating the art, building all that out, stripping the background out, putting them in that 3D tool, making all the tokens and stuff, putting them in Fantasy Grounds, and then associating them with the NPC stat block. So that's the work, right? That's all the effort that it takes to make stuff from scratch. So this would be for like homebrew. If you have special NPC or a special player character, you might go through this. But when it comes to like stock creatures and stock monsters and stuff, you don't have to do that. So if I go to modules and open up the bestiary and you go to NPCs, and I think the monster manual's done and there's a lot of other stuff that's done already. So if you come in here and open this up and you click on this, it's already done. You don't have to do it. The Smiteworks has already done all the default creatures. It's mostly the custom ones, or if you just have to have a unique token for a standard creature. So you don't have to do all the work, but it helps when you do some of the work. And when you're running the game, you're not only looking for immersion, but detail. So I was saying earlier, having these other stat blocks here and other information back here really helps. It speeds things up. It makes things smoother. It gives you more information. I mean, it's rather have too much than not enough. So now what I'll do is when I'm done checking that type of stuff, I'll look at the attacks here on this offense. And then here's the saving throw. Here's the pack tactics. Why does that say 0? Rottweiler to 0 hit points. Oh, I see. That's the undead fortitude. I don't know why it said 0 though. It's supposed to say 5, but that's all right. And then pack tactics is just a note. There's a knockdown and the prone effect, and then here's the bite with a prone effect on it. So it's looks pretty decent. It's pretty well put together. So my next steps now would be just to go back and put in all the other NPCs. So just do all the NPCs, and then I'm going to do all the artwork, then I'm going to do all the tokens, and then do all that stuff. So that's the majority of the work. Rest of it's copy and paste, right? If you've got story entries, or if you've got like tables and stuff, all that stuff's pretty much copy paste, formatting. But when it comes to making assets, that's what takes the time. So I think art, NPCs, maps, which is part of the art, so to speak, and the items are probably your most tedious, time-consuming pieces. Because with items, you don't have any choice. You just have to build them. And there's like 4 different kinds of items, 4 or 5 different kinds. There's really no quick way to do it unless you know how to do it through HTML or XML. I don't know how to do that stuff, so I'm not even going to bother. But there's no good quick way to do that. I do like the import tool for the NPCs, and most rule sets will support table import. So like for this, for instance, I can import a table. So if I wanted to, this is universal to all the rule sets, by the way. So if you use Pathfinder or any of the others, this tool is universal. The NPC stat block import is not. It depends on the rule set, and some use different tools. I know that what is that? Savage Worlds uses Swell or some kind of import tool that works differently. But anyhow, so this is one of the things that are of several of the things that you're going to come across. So I'm going to close this. And what I'm going to say is what I want to do is do a reaction table for the Rottweilers, let's say. So upon intrusion, like what are their behaviors? So we kind of know what dogs do, right? Their ears go up, they start barking, they start running around. But I want to do something that's interesting, or something that's more fun or random. So what I'm going to say is create a rollable list for a reaction table. I'll say for a reaction list of options for the undead dogs. Example format. This is important. So example. I'll say example formatting. In parentheses, no bold letters. I don't need that. Okay, so we'll do title. Next line will be, let's see, this title. Oh, here's the header. So it'll be 1D number with a pipe symbol as a separator. And that's the most important part. And then we'll say result. Oh, we'll say reaction result. We'll say And then what we'll do is I'm going to say weigh the table with 4 different, we'll say reactions to home invasion. And what we'll do is say weigh the table, or weigh the rollable list. If I say table, it'll start making tables. Weigh the rollable list with 4 different, so 2-digit numbers only. So what we'll do is give it an example. So we want 0, 1 to 0, 3. And then we'll put a pipe here. And then we'll call that result 1. And this is going to give it an idea of what you're looking for. Once you do this once or twice, it'll when you say rollable list, it'll know what you're asking for. So 0, 5 with the pipe separator again. And what basically it looks like I'm writing the whole thing, but really I'm just giving it an idea of what I'm looking for. Once I do that, it should do pretty well. So go ahead and say this. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let's see what happens. So when I do that, here's the title. We didn't give it a title, but see, well, I don't know why it did this, but that's okay. It's still the same type of thing. So it did 1D 100. That works too. It's almost like doing percentage. So the undead dogs growl menacingly. So I wanted it to weigh that. That's pretty even. So let's refactor and weigh for the most common reaction to the least, and use a 1d4 instead. Or no, 1d6. Let's see how it handles that. So I didn't mind this, but it's like 25% chance on all of it. I want it more weighed. Yeah, see, it didn't do the 2-digit number, but this is what I wanted. I'll say 2-digit result numbers only. That can throw off the import. Yeah, there we go. So this is the rollable list. Hey, Ola, how you doing? Okay, so this is our rollable list. So this is going to be the reaction table that we're going to associate with the dog. So if you wanted to use something like this, give the GM a list of reactions. They don't have to use these, but it gives them some ideas. And even if they don't use it, or if they want to use it, or if the GM wants to use it, you have it. So reaction results: the undead dog growls menacingly, its eyes glowing brighter as it prepares to attack the intruder. So this is the more common one, right? This is 0 to 3. 4 to 5, it remains still, watching the intruder with its eerie glowing eyes, creating an unsettling presence. I think that's pretty creepy. If it's just sitting there watching you, it's like you don't know when it's going to come at you. Oh, crap. Then this other one is the undead dog lunges at the intruder with stiff, unyielding muscles, aiming to defend its territory aggressively. So this is just all-out attack. So I kind of like this. So I'll take this information here, copy it, and then go into the Fantasy Grounds here. And what we're going to do is, we don't want a simple table because that would just be a one-item list and a title, right? So we're going to call this, I'll say, Rottweiler reaction table. So that's what that's going to be. And then we're going to paste the information here. So that's 1d6 reaction results, and then here are the 3 reactions. Now we want to go with delimitated, and the delimitator is going to be this line, right? That's what separates. And that's why we use the pipe. That's what that line is. And the reason for that is if you use commas or any other punctuation, it's going to create another row. We don't want, or another column. We don't want that. So we're going to say, is the column header in the first row? Yes, that's this top one. So we'll click that. And table ranges in the first column. So that's anything on the left of this pipe symbol. We're going to say yes. So that's what I usually do. Delimited pipe and these two. I don't use comma separators unless it's just like a list of items. You know, like fork, knife, spoon, and I'll put a comma between her. That's fine. That's easy. But when you're doing something that has a sentence or a paragraph or something that has structure to it, you don't want to use commas, colons, and semicolons because those are often used in writing. So just, you know, keep that in mind. Depends on what kind of table you're trying to make. But I'll go ahead and hit import, and it should come out with this. So here's a reaction table now. And you can roll on it to kind of check. And this is we'll make this a hidden roll since I don't want players to see that. When I roll this, it's going to tell me how the dog is going to react. Or I can just pick one of them. You know, you don't have to use the roll. I just kind of like to have some randomness occasionally. Like if you're undecisive, like how you want these things to light up, you know, how you want them to attack, that may be a thing. And as you can see, I made this Rottweiler table without any sort of group. So as a common practice, when you make your own content, start getting a habit of making your own group. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make an add category around group, click edit, and I'm going to rename this as the Witherbloom tables. This is going to be just for the whole encounter adventure. And then without this being selected, because if you select it, you can't do anything. But if you drop this down or you go to all, and then you just drop this down, don't select anything, just leave it open, and then navigate to your new item. So this is the Rottweiler reaction table. So that's in uncategorized right now. But I'm going to drag left click and drag this up here where it says Witherbloom tables. Drop it in there, and then that's how you add it to a new group, or how you can move it back or whatever. So now it'll be separated out from all the rest of the stuff I have on here. So that's just a tip that you'll find handy in the future. You may not need it. If it's just one thing, you know, who cares? But when you start making a lot of content, get in the habit of making these groups. Because that way you can separate out the stuff that you've worked on and the stuff that comes with your modules and such. And it's also more organized. You'll know where to look when you need to find stuff. And I did the same thing, I believe, with images. Yeah, so I called it My Maps, but that's where I put everything. So it's just a common thing that you may use, you know, in your future when you're creating content. And if you do decide to export it later, you can unload all of your content and leave the stuff that you've built in the campaign, and then you can export it. I mean, you don't have to unload the stuff, but what it does is it helps with the dependencies. You can kind of tell if you've accidentally drug over something from a book instead of creating it or making a copy of it. So that's why I unload all the content before I export, so I can see if I've missed anything. So anyways, and what I would probably do with this, since I don't have any story entry right now to attach it to, I'd probably put it on the back here of the Rottweiler. So I might put that like up here in this encounter area. So on the back, on the main tab, I'll take this table and link it back here. And if I want to use this during an encounter, it's right there at my fingertips. And then I can roll on that table. The other thing I might do is, if you wanted to include the artwork and you don't want to necessarily have it in this section up here, you can also do it the old way, which is to link the art straight to the stat block instead of up here where these things are. So what I might do with that is, first you have to add the asset to the actual campaign. So even though it's in the folder and stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean it's part of the campaign yet. So what I'm going to do is go to this handouts and then go to images. And what I'll do is drag this, whatever image you want. I think I'm going to use this big one. Actually I want to use the full body one. So take this full body image, drag and drop it in there, and there you go. So that's kind of another way you can share art. And then you would take this thing here and drag and drop it up here. And in that way you have this image ready to go. So if you want to pop that up, see what it looks like, then you can do that. So this is kind of the older way, how the older modules are set up. They would have a link image linked here if possible. Not all of them are that way. It just depends on the source, who did the conversion, all those sort of things. But then you can kind of do stuff that's kind of neat and more unique if you do take the time to do this ahead of time. So you could take something like this and add some flavor to it so it's not so boring. Like you might go into and add an effect to it. Let's add a little mist. That's pretty standard. So go to Effect. We have an effect layer up here. Go here, click on Mist, and there you go. Now, I usually put just a tiny bit of blur on it, so it's around the edges. And then I'll put a mask on it, so it only blurs inside of this image. I don't want it blurring the whole thing. So I'm masking out the outer parts. And then I'm going to turn down the amount and the speed so it's not so fast. And there we go. So there's some mist right there. I think 52, 48 looks good. All right, that's kind of too slow though. You can't really see anything. So maybe 53 was the ticket. Yeah, it looks just fast enough. I'll turn it up slightly. So you can have that mist in there to kind of give it that kind of spooky look, because they are undead. And then what you could do is take like these eyeballs and make them move a little bit. So let's go into effects again. And what we can do is do a couple things. So we can go, this is actually a little bit of overkill, but I just wanted to show you something. So we can take that and we can add, let's go with water, because that'll give us some movement. Okay, as you can see, it's over the whole thing. We don't want that. So we'll put a mask on it, and we're just going to unmask the eyeballs. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and just kind of trace around inside of the eye. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And now what you could do is turn that up. And that way you'll get that illusion that the eyes are moving. So now you get this kind of illusion that the eyeballs are moving around. And then if you wanted to, you can add another layer. And I wouldn't recommend using more than 3 effects layers, just for the sake of performance. Because when you start adding several layers on top of it, it does add up. So I'd be kind of careful. So this is a color adjustment. I'm just going to change the color. So I'm going to go with this red. You see it changes the whole image. I'm going to go ahead and mask it. And then I'm going to make a pupil in here, I guess, of like just a little splotch here. So I'm going to go with the Alt key, and I'm just going to trace around in here. And then do the same thing on the other side. And now what I'll do is adjust the color. There we go. Something like that. There we go. Tiny bit of blur in it. So you can do stuff like that to kind of, make your images come to life. I think that's overkill though. I don't think I would do that, but you could do something like that. And to have this just for these little spots here is a little bit of overkill. I think I'd just edit the photo and actually put an eyeball in there or something. But I like the movement. It kind of brings it to life. And of course you can add other assets if you wanted to. But I think this kind of gives you that illusion that there's some movement there. and that this thing is, alive and it's not static. So that's, something you can do to kind of bring your encounters to life and make it more interesting and those sorts of things. So in this case, I'd probably have this thing right here. And then when it came time to sharing, I'd definitely center it. And when it came time to sharing, I'd just have this ready to go. And then I just right click, sharing, share record. And then it will push that to the player. So if you're going to use it in an encounter, kind of show them what it looks like, you could do that. You can also do that from here. So you can click on this, and there's a share picture. So you can share this one. This is a shared asset now. So this is how you keep track of the images that you've shared, and then you can go in here and you can unshare them from here. This is sharing a campaign record, and this is sharing an asset record. So it's a little different, but same principle. So anyhow, folks, I think I've rambled on enough. Hopefully that helps you out. Again, if you want to join us, we are the Fantasy Grounds Academy. We have a Discord, and we just kind of help out. We're a community. We're not Smiteworks or the official Fantasy Grounds, but we do help as much as we can. And, you could support us by either following our channel. You can donate to how to minimize the NPC actions resume in Combat Tracker to take the same space. You can't. There's really no way to do that. Not without some sort of rewrite of the interface. How to minimize the NPC actions resume in combat. Yeah, there isn't any way to do that. Especially these more complex ones. That's going to list everything. So the only thing to really do is leave them out, and that's not helpful. So I don't know how else you'd do it. But I understand what you're saying, so it wouldn't take up as much room. Yep. So if you guys are interested, you can support us on the Fantasy Grounds Academy Patreon, or we have PayPal. It's just whatever you guys feel like doing, or come in and volunteer. Like if you guys are good at certain rule set, like Pathfinder, Starfinder. I mean, we need everything, not just D&D. The reason I show mostly D&D because that's what I'm most familiar with. But if I had more training, more experience and more time, I'd probably be showing more rule sets. Occasionally, I'll show Cyberpunk, Alien, and what is that? Shadow of the Demon Lord. And I did a little bit of Shadow Dark, and there were some others that I'm looking at. Another sci-fi. Oh, Fallout. So I think that's good enough for me. I don't need more rule sets under my belt. So anyhow, take care, you guys. Have a good one. See you later. Bye-bye.